All right, so this time I'm starting off the video with the shout out part first, and the reason why I'm doing that is that this is also an announcement video, as you may have already been able to tell, hopefully, I got my new microphone finally, and yeah, if this sounds half as good as the testing recording, and you know, I have no reason to doubt that it won't, and obviously I'll know because I'll have seen this before it goes up, but yeah, no noise. So, yep. So, yeah, just a little heads up though. I have a lot of content recorded back with the old mic, so it's going to take a little while for new videos with this improved mic quality to pop up, but they're gonna be coming. They're definitely not in the works for next week. Probably not the week after that. I'll see what I can do though. The problem is I've been playing a lot of Magic lately, and I do probably, unfortunately, and it sucks that I'm like basically right at the cusp of being trophy leader again. I've even traded places for trophy leader a few times this week, but I really probably have to get to some other things. So I don't. Unfortunately, I'm probably not going to be able to hold on to that trophy lead. I technically already lost it, but I'm probably not going to be able to regain it anytime soon. And that also means that probably, well, we'll see. If I can get in some games, I will try. I will definitely record them with this new mic, and yeah, hopefully that improves the viewing, or I guess rather listening experience quite a bit. This definitely was one of the most requested most requested uh, improvements to the channel, and I mean, so like the patron support is basically what encouraged me to go ahead and do this. I wasn't. I basically I decided not to wait until the patron money like totaled up for the microphone, because I mean like it's going to. I have no reason to doubt that my patrons are all going to jump ship suddenly for some reason. And more importantly, like for me the patron support, it's really more about the confidence and knowing that this is like a channel I can invest in. Um, and yeah, so I mean with that confidence, I just went ahead and got it. So I mean, because obviously, uh, this is going to be for some videos, down the road. But I mean, this is going to be for all videos down the road. But yeah, got the new mic. This shouldn't really impact my Magic content at all. But I currently have a little bit of a stand issue. It's been a little bit tricky to get a stand that that really fits my needs properly and actually fits my microphone, which is another issue. Um, but suffice it to say that at least for Magic, I basically play one-handed anyway. I don't really use the hotkeys. I just use right click and menu functions and all of that stuff. I always play Magic one-handed anyway. So for at least for Magic content, I don't know that I'm really good. I don't know when I'm going to get to in much other gaming content, but for Magic, this should be just fine. I hope you all enjoy the new improved microphone content that will hopefully be coming up in the not too distant future, but probably not this week or next week. I don't know. I don't know what I can say beyond that. Other than that, man, I got some interesting leagues actually recorded just with the poor audio. I mean, if the viewer response is just overwhelmingly just get those previous videos out of my face, even though I got some interesting stuff. I got to tell you, I got like I got another Merfolk League coming up where I tried Mishra's Factory in addition to Mutavault, because I used to do that in Legacy. I thought that might be interesting to show. I've got a few 5-0s, I think, with the Ragavan list recorded with the old microphone. I thought that might be interesting. I think I got 1 or 2 5-0s with the Merfolk list, that I posted on Twitter also. So, well, I don't know. But suffice to say, definitely better audio quality is in the future. So with that out of the way, yeah, with that out of the way, let's get to the shout out. Thank you very much, Frederick LeMay. Thank you very much, Pavilis Tamasauskas. Thank you very much, Alexis, Jeremy Elder, Brett, Michael Patton, Tyler Smith, Jonas Sandiger, SWDJP, Alexi, Scherer Bacow, or Scherer Bacow, Brendan Hopgood, Trent Crofts, and special thanks to new patron Jeff Clark. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, new patron Adam Boyd, new patron Cody Bryam, thank you as well. New patron Alex M. Wilson, thank you as well. So yeah, thank you very much to my old and to my new patrons. It's really because of you all that I went ahead and decided to go ahead and get this microphone. Definitely thanks a lot. And also, if you are, interested in becoming a patron, I've already got 19 videos. Now, of course, my first early access posts were split up like they are on the YouTube channel. Since then, I've started to post, the leagues all in one video. It's a little bit easier, I think, to manage on the patron site. Plus, I know some people get a kick out of having all the games combined into one video. This might be a patron exclusive actually going forward if you want to see my videos all combined into one. I'm just, at least for now, because it's a little bit iffy on how this may or may not mess with my viewer analytics if I dump these, which were already viewed in segments, onto my YouTube channel after the segments are done uploading. But if you're interested in becoming a patron, the main thing I'm offering now, obviously besides the shout out, which I just did, and which I'll continue to do, shout out or read out or show out. I mean, for now I don't have like over 100 patrons or anything, so no reason why I can't shout them all out. But so if you're it's actually early access that I'm offering on my Patreon, and if you're interested at all in supporting the channel, and if you're interested at all in seeing some of my content early, being the first to see it, I've got my new content that's going to be coming up. So just so you all know, my content for this coming week, if I remember correctly, it's going to be Obosh Red again for the Magic Mat channel, and I believe it's going to be my first mono green Infect upload for the MHayashi Gaming channel. And of course, becoming a patron will give you early access to videos that'll be uploaded to both channels. Except of course sometimes videos have to be posted perhaps right away for just being like hot off the press type issues. That really hasn't come up yet, but it could theoretically. So that might be a case where where I might not, post something early access first, but for most intents and purposes, planning to post everything that's going to go up early here, both for my Magic Mat and my MHayashi Gaming channel, so 2 for the price of 1. So what I've got coming up for the week after this coming week is, I call it Subtly Genius Merfolk, Mono Blue Subtly Genius Merfolk. So no, I haven't become a I haven't become a narcissist or anything. I just call it that because I'm testing out 2 cards. I'm testing out Subtlety, like the thumbnail would suggest, and I'm testing out Memorial to Genius. So no spoilers. I'm not gonna say how it goes, but I've never got around to testing Memorial to Genius, and well, here you get 2 for the price of 1, seeing me test out 2 cards at once. So like I don't want to give any spoilers, but let's just say that I think the leagues went decently. I think the league went decently well, and I think you will enjoy it. I'm not going to say anything more than that because I don't want to, but I think it's let's put it this way. This is definitely something that that I'm glad I did, and it's going to be something for me to consider going forward. And of course, for the MHayashi Gaming channel, I got some more Mono White Stoneblade content coming up. I did do a number of Mono White Stoneblade content. I think the deck actually evolved in a very interesting way that I hope you'll enjoy watching it evolve. I think I kind of took it from like a pretty consistent sort of 3-2 finish type of deck to I think a pretty consistent 3.5 type finish deck, a decent amount of 4-1s, but still some 3-2s. Still trying to get it there to like the to the 4.5 zone. You can't ever get a deck to like a consistent 5-0. That's like, well, unless you're playing like a deck that's going to get banned imminently or something. But hopefully we can get it to like the consistent 4-0 or 4.50, 4-1 or 4.5 or however you want to, But yeah. Anyway, so that's what's going to be coming up the week following this coming week. So if you want early access, consider becoming a patron. You're all very welcome to do that. But if not, your support, just liking and commenting and subscribing is much appreciated. Definitely smash that like button. That's it's one of the main things that actually really helps this channel. I think whenever, you know, all the people that are hitting the like button, that's really nice. You know, and I should probably remind myself, maybe I should remind my viewers to smash the like button earlier on the video, like this YouTuber named Grand Steven. It's speculated one of the reasons why his channel grew faster is because he always says smash the like button right in the beginning of his videos. Well, anyway, you know, it's neither here nor there. Just hope you all enjoy. Yeah, special thanks to, well, thanks to all of my viewers and supporters. Special thanks to my patrons, including the new ones. And let's get to the rest of the deck tech. Usually I'm going to put these at the end, but since this is a special announcement, putting this one first. All right, take care, everybody. Let's get to the deck tech. Okay, so, all right, the long-awaited mono green deck. Mono green. I mean, you know, yeah, mono green, boy. This was actually the last competitive deck that I really built, and actually it started with Legacy, by the way. Believe it or not, I tried making a monocolor competitive deck for each different deck type in Legacy initially. And this was the last deck, and at first I kind of gave up on mono green because I'm like, man, mono green, it's just kind of big Timmy smash, and you know, like it has no interaction, and like unless it's like winning on turn 2, I mean, like how is green supposed to keep up with all this other nonsense going on? And you know what I mean? And so I'm like, well, how does a mono green deck win on turn 2? And like I basically was about to give up. And then I think I was watching something in Standard actually at the time, because I was playing Legacy, and they were playing they were explaining Infect, and then I looked it up, and apparently it was like an archetype that was being developed in Legacy as well. And Invigorate was a card there. Unfortunately, Invigorate would just like break this deck in half. That's 3 mana, instant. Target creature gets +4/+4 until end of turn. But if you control a forest, you may have an opponent gain, I think, 3 life instead of paying its mana cost. It's effectively a free +4/+4. Like, yeah, Legacy's got that. So Legacy Infect definitely has got some pretty powerful tools like that, and of course, you know, you can splash blue and play Force of Negation and all that good stuff. But anyway, I actually mostly played mono green in Legacy, see, the thing is, actually, I kind of went on a totally different direction. Instead of playing Force of Will and all that, what I actually realized, and I'm surprised nobody else really was discussing this. I'm sure some people must be discussing this on the forums and whatnot, but I was like, hey, look at this card. You know, crop rotation. I'm like, I think I can do stuff with this card, because I'm like, wait a minute, Sejiri Steppe, I can go give my creature protection, because I saw people using, you know, these cards with with Knight of the Reliquary. So I'm like, wait a minute, you know, this is like an instant speed protection spell, which we need. I'm also like, wait a minute, this is also like an instant speed +2/+0 Teetering Peaks. You know, it's the red version of Sejiri Steppe. It gives +2/+0 when it comes into play, and it produces red. We don't really have crop rotation in this format, so I can't exactly use Sejiri Steppe to its full potential, nor can I actually really use Teetering Peaks. Although Teetering Peaks' kind of little brother is Cathedral of War, which is less explosive, but honestly kind of better in the long, you know, for like, it's a better, more resilient sort of pump effect. Yeah, but you know, basically, Infect can kill on turn 2. So this was my first competitive mono green deck, and I never really looked back. I like that it's super fast. It's weird because the idea is incredibly straightforward, but it's incredibly tricky to try to get in there and try to actually like not get blown out. So it's actually, I think, slightly trickier than Burn. I don't know if it's as tricky as my mono red Obosh Prowess deck, just because that deck, like, how to sequence a lot of times is quite not necessarily always obvious. But this deck is definitely tricky, and it probably is trickier even than Obosh Prowess, because the thing is, there actually aren't a lot of decisions a lot of times, but those decisions are just actually so critical, which I guess kind of sounds like what Burn players say. So I don't know what to say. I mean, the deck is definitely more tricky than Burn. I don't know how it squares up to the red deck. Definitely not as tricky as Hammer Time, but this deck is surprisingly tricky to play effectively, and you need to in order to be able to maximize it, but maximize its effectiveness. But yeah, so anyway, I ported the concept that I had for mono green Infect from Legacy into Modern when I started playing Modern. I kind of abandoned this deck for a while, but you know, I was thinking maybe I should, you know, I could reinvent myself. You know, I was wondering if I was going to go back to Infect, or if I was going to, try some. I was actually kind of intrigued by that mono green aggro deck, but I just think ultimately that deck's just not as fast as Infect, and that's just going to have a harder time. I mean, it can be very fast, but I just think it's going to have a harder time overall in the meta. I could be totally wrong about that, but I'm just like, yeah, I want to see if this crazy, this crazy concept that I started in Legacy and then I ported over to Modern when I started switching over from Legacy to Modern, if this was really going to bear fruit. And that concept is basically, since I don't have access to crop rotation, I use Sylvan Scrying instead. And Sylvan Scrying is definitely a little clunkier than crop rotation, but on the other hand, if it gets countered, you also don't sacrifice land in the process. Although, to be honest, crop rotation would be way better if they printed that, because I'm telling you, since most of the time we're using this to find Inkmoth Nexus anyway, which I was also using in Legacy with crop rotation, but the other side, like, I mean, was using probably 60 to 70% for Inkmoth Nexus, but that other 30 to 40% where you grab Sejiri Steppe or Teetering Peaks actually comes up more than you'd think, and it was really critical. But like, in this deck, we're probably fetching Inkmoth Nexus probably 75 or 80% of the time, but, I mean, the fact of the matter is just more Inkmoth Nexus are good, and, I mean, the reality is, crop rotation is still probably better, because if they counter your ability to get an Inkmoth Nexus and you don't have an Inkmoth Nexus, a lot of times you just kind of dirtle around, so, why not just be able to fetch for it for 1 mana at instant speed without having to use a land drop. But since we don't have access to crop rotation, which I think would shoot this deck through the roof, especially if they added Invigorate. Man, if they added Invigorate and crop rotation to this, then I'd just be going nuts, in my opinion. I don't know if I don't know if it would necessarily be like tier 1 or anything. I think it would be, but they're never going to do that. I don't know exactly if crop rotation would bust other archetypes or not. In Legacy, it can be problematic because, like, Gaia's Cradle and stuff, but they allow it. In Modern, I guess they've got I got Nykthos. I'm not really quite sure what else you can do to break crop rotation. I mean, if Gaia's Cradle is okay in Legacy, I mean, I don't know, does that mean Nykthos is okay in Modern? I mean, I don't know. Apples and oranges, maybe, but anyway, let's get to the actual deck itself. Okay, so this is basically an Infect deck, but it is mono-green. Yes, it is mono-green. Now, and unfortunately for those budget players, Ignoble Hierarch is still stupid expensive on Magic Online, so the deck isn't quite budget yet, but give it time. If the deck really does get printed to demand, and if the prices come down, this overall deck actually probably is fairly budget. Ignoble Hierarch used to be expensive, but I think this came down a bit from multiple reprintings too. Yeah, at the moment it's not budget, but I could see it definitely becoming budget in the not too distant future. Yeah, so it's mono-green, in fact. So the typical blue version plays Blighted Agent. We can't, because we don't have blue. So, I mean, whatever we were to do, isn't Blighted Agent the most powerful Infect creature and one of the main reasons to play Infect, period? In my opinion, it is one of the reasons to play Infect, but it's not the only one, and no as to the question of whether or not it's the most powerful Infect creature. I say it is a close second. I don't even know if it's a close second, but it is definitely second. I think, hands down, Inkmoth Nexus is definitely the #1 best Infect creature, and I'll tell you why. It's very simple. Inkmoth Nexus is immune to most sorcery speed removal, except for like Vindicate, which just got printed, obviously. That is a thing we've had to deal with sometimes. But it's immune to most sorcery speed removal. Field of Ruin can be an issue sometimes too, but if we got more ways to fetch it, maybe we can fetch enough. And also, you can, by the way, even if they use Field of Ruin, you can activate Inkmoth Nexus if you got enough mana left over it, and then give it hexproof. But then sometimes, they can respond with a removal spell. But the point is, most of the time, you get to decide when you're going to expose Inkmoth Nexus to removal. And that enables you to play a waiting game, sort of, where sometimes they as long as Inkmoth Nexus is one of your lands, the opponent has to respect that and keep mana open, unless they have, like, something that actually interacts with lands directly. And that's very powerful, because that allows you to set up big turns. And what's good at setting up big turns? Well, mana accelerants. Because then we can, like, play multiple pump effects and save them, and I'll get to all this goodness. But yeah, anyway, it's in my opinion, this is hands down the best Infect creature, and I think that this is kind of really what makes the deck. This is kind of what makes the deck too, but I think actually Glistener Elf might be second, actually, even over Blighted Agent, but I mean, the thing that Blue-Red, in fact, has going for it is all three, Inkmoth Nexus, Blighted Agent, and Glistener Elf, are all amazing for different reasons. But we get to play effectively 8 copies of what I think is the best Infect creature, whereas they get to play the best and the second best. And actually, I used to play Blue-Green Infect deck with Sylvan Scrying as well. I don't know, actually. I think that deck had decent success. I really don't know if that deck had more or less success. I will tell you, it definitely was not bedazzling me with such overwhelming success. It was very obvious that I was gonna go blue-green and never look back. And obviously, I haven't permanently gone blue-green. I'm probably going to be mostly mono. I was always mostly mono-green, in fact, but I did, dabble in blue-green every now and then for whatever reason, because things were... I think it was basically when Affinity started becoming a bigger deal a few times. I just really liked straight unblockability because, they played a lot of flyers, and Inkmoth Nexus wasn't always reliable, and Apostle's Blessing was nice, but I think I played Apostle's Blessing and Blighted Agent when I played blue-green Infect, but yeah, mostly I played mono-green Infect. I played mono-green Infect when I played it, when I played Infect at all. I've just reached for blue-green a few times when I felt like Blighted Agent was particularly necessary in the particular meta. But yeah, I mean, so our Infect creatures are Glistener Elf, Inkmoth Nexus, which I've just went over, and Sylvan Scrying to fetch Inkmoth Nexus. I'm just going to briefly say, though, Sylvan Scrying will mostly fetch Inkmoth Nexus, but you'd be surprised. A lot of times, you can fetch a Cathedral of War, and this is a very nice land. Most of the time, you're not fetching for it; you're just playing it out when you draw it. But it gets to pump your creatures. Sometimes you can actually end up just if they kill all your Infect creatures, just attacking with a lot of Exalted triggers with your 8 Hierarchs. And this kind of is like a 12th Hierarch in a way. I mean, Hierarchs 9 through 12. So yeah, this is actually a surprisingly underrated card. It allows you to attack over a lot of smaller, in the early game you can push through a lot of, Glistener Elf, and also allows you to make your land drops while also effectively playing spells that are going to pump your Inkmoth when you attack in a big turn. Unless hopefully you get to see it in action, but it's a very solid card that I think is underrated. It's been a mainstay actually for mono green Infect for a long time. It's just you almost never run into mono green Infect. It is technically an archetype, and other people do play it. You do see it every maybe 1 in 1,000 matches, 1 MTGO. And whenever you see mono green Infect, you usually see Cathedral of War, and we're no exception. We're just also playing the 8 of the Hierarchs too, so we have 12 Exalted effectively. I will say my understanding is most mono green Infect players are playing mono green Infect for budget reasons, which means they're usually not playing the Hierarchs. I am not playing mono green Infect for budget reasons. I am playing mono green Infect because I think it's better. I mean, look, I don't know. It's probably so close that don't let that bother you if you're a blue-green Infect player. The reality is nobody really knows. This is just kind of my heuristic, is that I follow the principle generally that I don't splash another color unless I think I need to. I think being monocolor is incredibly powerful, so I basically look to if I have everything I need in a single color first. If I have everything I think I need to be successful in a single color, I just don't go to another color. It's that simple, for me at least. I do think that there's a lot of advantages to being one color, other than just not losing as much life to your lands. I mean, first and foremost is Blood Moon, but even aside from Blood Moon, I think being, just not getting mana screwed. And believe it or not, sometimes with blue-green Infect, I didn't draw blue mana. I know, hard to believe, but it happens. And yeah, anyway, suffice it to say that I like this the concept behind this deck, and Sylvan Scrying can go get Cathedral of War, and this does happen sometimes when you're 1 damage short and you need to fetch up one more pump spell. Sylvan Scrying can kind of be like a +1/+1 pump spell on a critical turn you need it. I usually wouldn't recommend fetching Cathedral of War unless it's for a critical turn, unless you're setting up a turn and they're not playing a deck with enough removal that unless you feel fairly confident that you can set up for a big turn and you calculate it and you can push more total damage over a few turns with Cathedral of War, which actually does come up more than you'd think. Yeah, and Pendelhaven, I'm playing all 4 Pendelhavens. I know this is legendary land, but I mean, hear me out. It just helps push through early Glistener Elf so much. It's a free extra pump that also helps sometimes protect against Stomp or Lava Dart, and that comes up, you know. I'm telling you, don't get cute. It's just, there's a reason why a lot of Elves players play, I assume, more than 2. But, you know, because I do see it a lot in their deck. Maybe they just play 2. I highly doubt they only play 1. But, yeah, trust me, 4 Pendelhavens, it's usually fine. And the worst case scenario, a lot of times you can just make other land drops, and then a lot of times, like, it doesn't even matter because you don't need the extra green mana until your critical turn, and then you just tap the Pendelhaven for green for something like Scale Up or something, and you play the other Pendelhaven, and then you have another green mana for the critical turn when you need a critical mass of green mana for pump and protection and all that good stuff. So you'd be surprised, like even because of the new legendary rule, a lot of times Pendelhaven's downside doesn't even necessarily matter as much, because if it was like the old legendary rule, that would be a problem where you have to sack both like immediately, and you don't even get to tap one of them in response. You don't even get to tap the one that's going to die in response. Just both just immediately go to the graveyard. That was a little brutal for Pendelhaven. But with the new legendary rule that you choose which one to sack, that's trust me, I've never really minded playing 4 Pendelhavens. Although there has been time. If I'm playing less than 4 Pendelhavens, it's usually because I'm trying to squeeze more other types of lands in the deck, and it's not because of an inherent problem with playing 4 Pendelhavens. I'm telling you that right now. So, Ghost Quarter, I think it's fairly obvious. This is mostly for Tron. To a lesser extent, sometimes this is for like, you know, Hammer Time. Like if they go all in an Inkmoth Nexus, you can just leave up a Ghost Quarter, and obviously they won't go all in front of a Ghost Quarter unless they have an answer. But this can deter, you know. Sorry. Yeah, sorry, excuse me. Yeah, this can deter, like, you know, manlands from attacking. This can deter manlands from blocking. That probably comes up more. Sometimes, like, opposing Inkmoth or Blinkmoth Nexuses, which more decks play than you'd think. At least Inkmoth Nexus nowadays. And, yeah, not necessarily a lot of lands have flying, but yeah, I mean, the main reason, I gotta be honest, the main reason why Blood Ghost Quarter is in the main deck is just because I get to free up some extra slots for sideboard cards, and actually I think 1 copy is pretty free. You'd be surprised the number of times where I just play it. I crack it on one of my forests and play, and then I just fetch another forest, and I get 2 green mana on a critical turn. So it's kind of like, you can think of it kind of like a legendary forest in a way in that regard. But like, yeah, it has pretty clear utility, but it also you know, it also can produce green mana, at least on 1 turn, because if you target your own land, you can go fetch a forest. So, yeah, Ghost Quarter I think is fairly free. It's got some utility in certain matchups, but it's just mostly. I would only play 1 copy, but I think one copy and exactly 1 copy is pretty free in this deck. And you can, of course, you know, tutor it up with Sylvan Scrying. That takes us to Sejiri Steppe, and Sejiri Steppe is one of the main draws, I think, to playing the Sylvan Scrying package as opposed to reaching for like Blighted Agent, for example. I just really like this because sometimes you can set up situations where like, say you've got 2 Inkmoth Nexi, right, and they've got 1 land untapped, and you're thinking like, man, well, Sejiri Steppe, it's not like crop rotation. You can't use it at instant speed to protect your card. Like, I mean, imagine they're at like 2 Infect, and you've got like 2 Inkmoth Nexi, and you've got like 1 Cathedral of War, and you can attack with both, but like, you know, but they're at 2 life, so like if you attack with 1, they can Fatal Push that 1. If you attack with 2, they can, you know, they can Fatal Push 1, and then the other one gets through, but they live at 9 poison counters. So you're probably thinking, well, how does Sejiri Steppe help you in this situation where you can attack with 2 Inkmoth Nexus and you got 1 Exalted Trigger, and they've got 1 black mana open, and you know they got Fatal Push? Actually, think a little bit deeper, and here's how it helps. Okay, you activate your first Inkmoth Nexus, preferably with Cathedral of War because that produces colorless. You play Sejiri Steppe. Now, what do? Right? You know you're going to name black, but if they Fatal Push, then you just, you know, you can even use that Inkmoth Nexus to activate the other Inkmoth Nexus, and then you attack and you get Exalted and then you win. So you see what I mean? But if they just let it go, you just attack with that one and they can't target it. But if they target it, you just activate the other Inkmoth Nexus. And I mean, and also obviously sometimes they've got like a bunch of so you'd be surprised how often this happens. You've only got a Glistener Elf in play. For whatever reason, like, it's stalled out. They feel fairly comfortable. They flood the table with like a bunch of threats, either of one color, or like they attack with the only other creature of another color, which, you know, you can't always count on that happening, but sometimes it does happen. But yeah, like you'd be surprised how often they have like a whole wall of blockers that are all the same color, and they tap out because they know you can't get an instant speed Inkmoth Nexus, and they incorrectly think that you can't suddenly make your creature unblockable, at least in any kind of mana efficient way. And then boom, you either play Sejiri Steppe from hand if you've got it, or you play Sylvan Scrying and tutor it up and play it, and sometimes you can just, and then you can just scale up or something, and then suddenly boom, you just crash through with that innocuous looking Glistener Elf suddenly just wins the game out of nowhere. So yeah, you'd be surprised. This card actually has more utility than you think. It doesn't always come up, probably only comes up about 15 to 20% of the time, but maybe even less, probably only 10 to 15% of the time, but like, hey, when it does come up, no other land does what this land does. This was a holdover from Legacy that I used to love to play, and I'm not giving this up anytime soon. I'm just not. You can't make me. I love it. And yeah, and so Glistener Elf, and I think it's pretty obvious why we play it. It's our fastest Infect creature, and it is worth noting that we can get some turn 2 kills. We can scale up our Glistener Elf and then Might of Old Krosa for exactly 10 Infect, or 10 poison counters. That doesn't come up a lot though, because obviously if they've got a single blocker, they're going to block, and if they got a land untapped, a lot of times it's kind of incredibly dangerous to attack, unless that land is like forest or something. They could still have Dismember, but you know, I'd probably go for it there. But if it's like white, black, or red, I would definitely. And nowadays, a lot of people are playing Suspend for some unknown reason. Even blue is not necessarily safe, although I think eventually a lot of these decks that are playing Suspend are probably not going to play it anymore, because it's always been fairly mediocre. I've never had it played against me in Infect, but against all my other decks, it's been very mediocre. Yeah, so Inkmoth Nexus, I mean, Glistener Elf is just, you know, pretty obvious why that's in the deck. It just, you can sometimes, the thing is, not always will you be able to kill on turn 2, but a lot of times you can either push early Infect damage while their guard is down, and then that makes it easier for Inkmoth Nexus later, if you pushed early damage, or sometimes you can also exhaust some of their early removal, or put their plan a little bit off kilter, because they usually have to respect the Glistener Elf on turn 1, and usually I recommend, if you've got Glistener Elf in your opening hand, even if you've also got Noble Hierarch or Ignoble Hierarch, you usually lead on the Glistener Elf, because other than that Sejiri Steppe example I gave earlier, which, you know, does show that you always have to respect the Glistener Elf if you're the opponent. The reality is in a lot of games that may not necessarily come up with the Sejiri Steppe example I gave. And a lot of times, if the game drags on, Glistener Elf kind of becomes just like a chump blocker, unfortunately. So, you know, it loses its value fairly quickly. It obviously leads to some of the most explosive and busted starts available. It's one of the few decks that can win on turn 2, and not necessarily incredibly rarely. Yeah. Noble Hierarch is great too, but unlike Glistener Elf, Noble Hierarch is basically always live, and it's even always live if you're gonna beat down with Jegantha, which I'll get to in a bit. Yeah, so I usually lead on Glistener Elf, and that leads us to the 8 Hierarchs. I mean, I don't know what to say other than that they're mana dorks. They're also pump spells. Yeah, I mean, cards are good. If you ever played with a Noble Hierarch in Infect, you know it's good. I'm telling you, playing 4 more copies, it's also good. I don't know, kind of enough said, right? Like, it's you know, I mean, we're not even playing like blue, so the extra colors on Ignoble Hierarch, that doesn't make a difference at all. It's basically the same thing, and it's every bit as good as Noble Hierarch, which is amazing. Yeah, I don't know what to say other than that this deck is surprisingly mana hungry, and a lot of times you need a lot of mana to activate Inkmoth Nexus and lots of stuff, and you know, just being able to make more mana, and also just, yeah, I mean, also like have your creatures get bigger with the attack. I don't know what else to say other than that. It's very deceptively good, but it's good. You know, and of course scale up Might of Krosa. These are my dedicated pump spells. I kind of bit the bullet. For a while I was thinking I'd futz around a bit with pump spells that had more utility, like maybe Groundswell, like maybe you know, Mutagenic Growth I liked because it was free and I could sometimes catch opponents off guard and save my stuff from Stomp, and like, yeah. But at the end of the day, I think just having basically the most consistent, the most powerful pump spells that were printed, which also combo together nicely for a turn 2 kill with Glistener Elf, but are also just pretty good in and of themselves. Just being able to push a lot of infect damage, even if you're not killing all in one turn, being able to push a lot if their guard is down, it's very, very good. I don't know what else to say. I think everybody knows scale up is great at this point. I'm still, I still kind of like, so there's something to be desired for it being sorcery speed, in my opinion, but I've been liking it so far, and I've definitely been liking the occasional turn 2 that I can pull off when it combines with Might of Old Krosa. It is worth noting, if you're playing mutagenic growth, you basically always have the possibility of a turn 2 kill, but it usually involves like 3 or 4 mutagenic growths, so that's not always reliable. Or if you've got like Groundswell or something in mutagenic growth, then you can always play Might of Old Krosa, mutagenic growth, and Groundswell, but that's like a 3-card combo, and I don't really want to play more than 8 dedicated pump spells because, like at that point you're a little bit too vulnerable if they kill your only infect creature. Then you're stuck with a bunch of cards that don't really do much, except for that side plan that I'll get to in just 1 second. But then that leaves to the protection pump spells, and everybody knows Vines of Vastwood and Blossoming Defense. Very standard staples for Infect. They pump, they protect, I don't know what else to say. You really need these because there's a lot of decks that don't play red-based removal, so you can't necessarily count on just a pure pump to save your creatures. Fatal Push, Path to Exile, all that stuff, and these cards help with that, so in they go. It is worth noting that Vines of Vastwood also has the ability to make their creatures untargetable by them. And there's probably other instances where this comes up, but Twin, back when that was legal, this used to be a way you could disrupt that combo. But right now, probably the most relevant deck that's affected by this is probably Hammer Time. So much so that I haven't really played that matchup much, but I suspect, and I don't think I've certainly seen Vines of Vastwood when I've played it. I think I won the only times I've played so far. There was, anyway. But Vines of Vastwood basically prevents either their hammer from equipping or from Sigarda's Aid, targeting it and putting and attaching, because it makes it not able to be targeted by spells or abilities, including Sigarda's Aid. So, so basically you get to counter the Colossus Hammer effect, whether it's being equipped or used through Sigarda's Aid. I think that might even be kind of like a mirror breaker, possibly, because Hammer Time is kind of like Infect in many ways. Anyway, that's that. Apostle's Blessing, this card is excellent, and it's basically, this card is the closest thing to that crop rotation instant speed Sejiri Steppe we got. It is actually better because protection from artifacts, especially now that affinities become a thing again. I wish it said colorless instead of artifacts, but I guess it's an old templating. We didn't really have colorless cards that weren't artifacts when this was printed, that I'm aware of. So, unfortunately it doesn't really push damage with Eldrazi, but it does do really well a lot of times because, first and foremost, actually, it's a protection spell that you can use your colorless lands on, and a lot of times that does help smooth your mana, because you do have a lot of brown mana, so to speak. And just the other thing is, again, it just makes Glistener Elf a lot more viable, because you can push damage sometimes when they let their guard down. You can also push damage with Inkmoth over flying colored creatures like Bitter Blossom sometimes. Apostle's Blessing is a little trickier because it doesn't pump itself, so I think people don't automatically realize how good it is. But I wouldn't leave home without it. I think, especially in mono green, in fact, where we don't have natural unblockability what's that card called? Blighted Agent. I think Apostle's Blessing is invaluable. Okay, sideboard. Sideboard we have Wilt. This card, it's basically just destroy target artifact or enchantment cycling too. I was actually playing Naturalize for a little while. You could play something like Deglamour to shuffle their card into the library, but I don't like Deglamour because a lot of times you're going to be bringing these in against Stoneforge Mystic type decks. Not always because necessarily you're worried about the equipment they play, although sometimes, mostly all of the Skycleaves can be a problem given their creatures flying, but anyway, but also because Sometimes they play Bitter Blossom. I don't know if all of them do, but some of them do. You definitely have to answer Bitter Blossom. That card is a big, big problem because it really, really blanks Exalted. And this deck is 12 Exalted. But anyway, yeah, I was playing Naturalize for a while. I think it's better because you don't want to be, sometimes you do target equipment like Maul the Skyclaves, and you don't want that shuffled back in, or another Stoneforge can just go fetch it again. You just want it flat destroyed. So I was playing Naturalize, and then I realized, oh yeah, like Mono Green Tron, why can't I play Wilt? Isn't that just strictly better? It is just strictly better. So it's basically a Naturalize with cycling. Enough said. That actually does make it a lot better, though. A lot better. Because you can side this in more aggressively, even when you're not sure they necessarily have a problematic card. And one of them, of course, is Blood Moon. Be very, very concerned about Blood Moon. Blood Moon doesn't make it impossible to win, but it definitely probably improves their chances like tenfold that they're going to win, because Inkmoth Nexus, like I said, is your strongest Infect creature, and they shut it completely off, and then essentially are trying to win with Glistener Elf or Jegantha. Yeah, I mean, I guess we have to talk about this now, but yeah, I know Jegantha seems it's completely a useless, wasted sideboard slot, but you know, it does actually come up sometimes. Sometimes you do actually win with Jegantha, and the way that happens is sometimes they keep an incredibly controlling. Excuse me. Sometimes they keep an incredibly controlling hand without much of like a finisher of their own. And sometimes, I mean, their fatal pushes, their abrupt decays, whatever. I mean, whatever it is they're playing. Sometimes whatever it is they're playing can't necessarily hit Jegantha. Sometimes they just exhaust their removal. They kept a very control-y hand without a win con necessarily. They deal with all your creatures, and then sometimes you just drop a 5/5, mostly vanilla beater, which also is a mana dork, by the way. And in a mana-hungry deck like this, sometimes even a 5-mana mana dork is not that bad. Unfortunately, you don't get all 5 colors of mana, unless you want to use Apostle's Blessing, but yeah, because you can't use the mana for generic, unfortunately. Yeah, most of the time it's just kind of a mana dork for 1 mana, but sometimes that can be valuable. But yeah, mostly it's just to be a vanilla 5/5 beater. It's completely free in this deck. I don't really foresee necessarily, certainly in the main deck, ever playing anything with double colored costs. Except maybe for Dismember, but I don't think I've usually main deck Dismember, just because I want to be more streamlined with the combo. Yeah, but anyway, yeah, it's just basically completely free because none of these cards cost more, have a double symbol mana cost on their cost, and yeah, there you go. Sometimes you just have a big giant body late in the game as just like a final backup plan, and hey, I'll take it. I don't know what else to say other than I'll take it. It's not always going to come up, but hey, it's better. It's better than nothing. And some people used to play like Tarmogoyf or Kitchen Finks or something on the sideboard. How about just play Jegantha and just, sometimes that kind of does what that concept's trying to do. Anyway, then we have Spatial Contortion, and this card might seem weird, and I'm going to say right up front that I acknowledge and I am aware, and I was made aware of it, and I wasn't originally aware of it, but this card has a big downside, which is that you have to hold up your colorless sources against Magus of the Moon. Once Magus of the Moon hits, it shuts off this card, and then effectively you can't deal with Magus of the Moon for the rest of the game. I will admit that is a big problem, and if Magus of the Moon starts seeing a lot more play, then Dismember is probably going to be where you want to be. I prefer this card, though, unless Magus of the Moon is the creature of choice. Honestly, the main creature I'm afraid of, to be honest, is Plague Engineer. I mean, because like even Magus of the Moon, you can still try to cobble a win together with Glistener Elf. I mean, in a way, maybe even Jegantha, but Plague Engineer is actually, I didn't realize this, but it's actually a very, very big problem for the deck. So much so that I think this deck might be a little too easy to hate out, and we might want to have our fun while it lasts. I don't think that this deck's ever going to catch on that much because there's a lot of inherent weaknesses, and this deck is kind of relies on catching people off guard in a way. But like, yeah, one of those problems is Plague Engineer. I don't know why they did this, but they changed all the creature types from I think this used to just be Elf Warrior, and this used to be just a Blinkmoth artifact. But I think they for some reason they changed all the creature types to Phyrexian as well. So somebody named Phyrexian against me with Plague Engineer, and I was just like, well, I guess that's basically GG. And then I think I even tried fetching Jegantha, And I'm like, well, shoot, man, this thing's got a Death Touch. And then I think they played a second Plague Engineer, and I'm just like, well, how am I supposed to beat this? I mean, I need like multiple Apostles' Blessing. I need them to have 0 removal. It's just, yeah. The main reason I play Spatial Contortion is basically Plague Engineer. I mean, sometimes you can slow down, like, is it prowess? I think it's correct to side out Apostles' Blessing for Spatial Contortion, and is it prowess just as a speed bump, because it's a little bit of a race. They're one of the fastest. They're one of the only decks that sometimes can outrace you. You know, so yeah, Spatial Contortion is can be good there, but kind of the conceptual reason why I like Spatial Contortion instead of Dismember, if I can. And again, there will be times probably where we may have to reach for Dismember again, but unless like Magus of the Moon becomes the de facto Moon card that we see all over the place, you know, and we see it a lot. I do conceptually like Spatial Contortion more than other removal options, including Dismember, and the reason why is very simple. Because this is a pump spell in addition to a removal spell. Most people use it for the -3 toughness, but there are some occasions, it hasn't come up yet, but I was aware of it, and I was calculating whether or not this gave me a kill. And trust me, it'll come up where sometimes this will allow you to push through lethal damage, because you're going to remind yourself, oh no, it did actually happen once. I don't think it was recorded, but I think it did happen where I'm like, yep, I got lethal because I counted Spatial Contortion, and that pushed me into lethal range. You know, I mean, it doesn't always come up, but the fact that this does double duty and it's not just a removal spell, that I really conceptually like that. I mean, I'm a sucker for cards that just tickle me on a conceptual level. I don't know what to say. I mean, and I've played it. It's actually fully supportable with 11 main deck colorless lands, Inkmoth Nexus, Cathedral of War, Ghost Quarter, and ways to fetch them. And you're going to be fetching Inkmoth a lot, so it's actually kind of more like 13 colorless sources. 4 Cathedrals, 4 Inkmoth, effectively another 4 Inkmoths, so that's 12, plus Ghost Quarter, that's 13. So, and you can even side in Grasping Dunes if you want even more colorless sources for a total of effectively 14 colorless sources. So trust me, and you know, obviously this isn't in the main deck, so if you really want it that badly, you know, you definitely can have access to 14 colorless sources, and that's the same amount of untapped green sources that aren't Ghost Quarter we basically have in the main deck. And trust me, 14 untapped green sources, it's fine. Every once in a while it's a problem, but same thing with the colorless sources. You're going to have colorless lands, so Spatial Contortion we can support. It just really tickles my fancy on a conceptual level that it's also a pump spell. I love it. I've played it. You don't have to lose life with it too, which is nice. It works. I don't know what to say other than it works as advertised. Okay, it works as advertised. It's not bad. This deck can support it, so I don't know. I like it. I don't know what to say. Oh yeah, and it doesn't conflict with Jegantha. That's not a huge reason. I'd still play Dismember if Magus of the Moon was absolutely ubiquitous in the format. But it is just nice that it also doesn't conflict with Jegantha, for what it's worth. Again, doesn't count for that much, but you know, it does matter. I mean, it does matter a little bit. Yeah, and then that takes us to, I mean, Relic of Progenitus. We all know this. I don't think I need to explain it more. One could make an argument that maybe we want to play Lantern of Soul Guide Lantern, because we may not necessarily want to try to control Tarmogoyf and, you know, do other things with Relic. But here's the thing I like about this more than Soul Guide Lantern, because like there are a lot of control decks playing Drown in the Loch, and I just kind of like the idea of this being possibly another protection spell from Drown in the Loch, and in a way from Snapcaster Mage in control, and I just don't think you can really justify that with Soul Guide Lantern. I don't know if that's going to come up much. I honestly don't side in Graveyard Hate that much, period. I do need some help against Dredge, and I think this is good. I don't know what else to say. Honestly, though, Dredge may need to respect us more than we need to respect them, because with just Narcomoebas, sometimes we can just get them on turn 2. Most of their creatures don't block until they start dumping Narcomoebas into play. Even with Narcomoeba, that's basically their only colored flyer for most of the game until they start hard casting Instinct Lead Imps, so sometimes Sejiri Steppe just instantly clears the board of blockers. I mean, you know, so you can just get through. I mean, Apostle's Blessing, same thing. My memory is I didn't have a particular hard time with Dredge, but then again, that was the Dredge decks of yore that didn't have like Creeping Chill. Honestly, Creeping Chill isn't as big of a deal because we don't care about the life, although it does cause us to lose life, but I don't know. I don't know, I really liked Relic in decks that could support it, so I'm still trying it. I like the way that this is good against Drown in the Loch, so yeah, I don't know. Grasping Dunes, I side this in a few times. I don't think I've ever actually used its ability, except for, I think, just a couple occasions where I think I snagged a, what is it called, a Flicker Wisp. I think I used it defensively because that was kind of pestering me. I mean, the reason why this is in here is just because I kind of like the idea of having some type of land that can interact with creatures in some way. I mean, sure, I've got my Spatial Contortions, but I may not always necessarily want to bring in 4 dedicated slots. Sometimes I may want to just bring in a tutor target. It's not the most powerful creature removal type effect, but I mean, it does clear some flyers, like I said, like Flicker Wisp. It does deal with some of those, like Inkmoth Nexus, opposing Inkmoth Nexus, and other 1/1 flyer creatures that they might play, Thopters or something. I don't know. It comes up, you know, when you see something with 1 toughness that's a flyer, basically. There's a possibility that Grasping Dunes might help you push damage with Inkmoth Nexus. It maybe came up once, like I said, against Flicker Wisp. I don't know. I don't know what to say other than that. I think it's pretty free, and also it's also just another colorless source if you really want to make sure you have your 14 colorless sources for Spatial Contortion, so you never really get screwed off of being able to play that. I guess that's kind of nice too, an option to have. Some matchups also Sejiri Steppe is just really not that great. And having a land that comes into play tapped, even if it doesn't produce a color, is probably superior to one that does come into play tapped. And that leaves us Bojuka Bog. I mean, this is a simple card. It just comes into play and wipes the graveyard. And yeah, I mean against like Dredge, for example, I get to play 4 relics and Bojuka Bog, where I have 4 cards to tutor up for it. Like I said, a lot of times against Dredge, in my experience from back of yore, I haven't played it a lot recently, certainly since I picked this deck up again. But my memory was that Dredge kind of had to respect our combo more than we did theirs. But you know, it is available to you, and sometimes they just go nuts and they dump their whole graveyard to the whole library into their graveyard, and then they say go, and then like you don't necessarily have to kill next turn, and you're like, oh, what do I do? And then sometimes you're like, oh, Bojuka Bog, and then they scoop. You know, it happened. It did happen to me before. Also with that new Feasting Troll King combo thing and stuff, sometimes you want to just grab Bojuka Bog and just slice that thing out of there. Although my experience, very limited, but it has been more recent, is also that the Feasting Troll King deck, yeah, whatever they call it, the cookbook combo deck, the green-black one specifically. My experience so far has actually been, and this might be one reason to play Infect, is I felt like I've done fairly well. There was one deck splashing red and playing like, I don't really want to say, there was one deck that I wasn't as sure I had a good matchup against, but that the standard, I think, black-green version, I think we actually have a good matchup, because so far my experience has been, I mean, like the life from the food just doesn't matter, and they don't seem to play a ton of removal, they don't play a ton of flyers. So, like, honestly, a lot of times they got their Feasting Troll King or even 2 out, and I just won with Inkmoth Nexus next turn. So, you know, we may not necessarily need Bojuka Bog, and it is kind of funny that a lot of these, like, graveyard decks arguably are kind of good matchups anyway. But, I don't know, just on a conceptual level, I just like a land I can reach for that interacts with the graveyard, and there it is. It's worth noting that there are some alternative land options we could play as tutor targets. We could also play, like, a 1 of Vesuva to double up on like Bojuka Bog effects, or double up on Sejiri Steppe. I played Vesuva in the Legacy crop rotation version. Absolutely necessary in my opinion, but then again, you know, you're using Sejiri Steppe a lot more in Legacy because you can use it as an instant speed. You know, when you play 1 mana for crop rotation, sack a land, put Sejiri Steppe into play as an instant, or Teetering Peaks, you know, 2/1 instant speed land. I mean, it's not a land, it's instant speed, but you can put it into play instant speed off of crop rotation. So you know. Yeah, in Legacy, Vesuva is an absolute house, being able to double up on your. It's a little vulnerable to Wasteland sometimes. If they got an untapped Wasteland, don't go for Vesuva. Try to copy one of your other utility lands, but they don't always do that. And a lot of times the Wastelands were hitting Inkmoth Nexus like immediately. And I think that's one reason why I played crop rotation, is my Inkmoth Nexus were always getting wastelanded, that I'm like, well, I don't know, what if I just could like overload the wastelands and play more? And I'm like, well, that's one reason, you know. Anyway, yeah, so I think that's basically as much I can say about the deck. I mean, geez, I've been talking for a while, so Yeah, Bojuka Bog. Just a little extra way to interact with the graveyard. I'm not necessarily reaching for Vesuva this time, just because the vast majority of the time I don't even search for one Sejiri Steppe, let alone two. I don't necessarily search for one Ghost Quarter, let alone two. Just this corner cases. These are mostly corner case cards too, so I don't see the reason to double up on a corner case card. You know, in Modern that is, as opposed to Legacy. So yeah. Anyway, if you like this content, like and subscribe. Stay tuned for the gameplay vids. Let's see if we can spread the if we can get down with the sickness, I guess, as Nickelback or whatever it was said. All right. Let's see.